Journey IFC strives to create safe spaces to worship God. Know that you are welcome just as you are, regardless of religious background or lack thereof, skin color, political affiliation, sexuality, age, culture, or any other label you own or society throws on you. You are welcomed and celebrated here just as you are.
But also expecting perfection of myself, I decided it was more important to listen and respond to every person who came up before me. And so I did that perfect choice before the perfect choice of preparing myself so I could present perfectly. So good luck. Meanwhile, Saul, still breathing threats and murder against the disciples of the Lord, went to the high priest and asked him for letters to the synagogues at Damascus, so that if he found any who belonged to the way, men or women, he might bring them bound to Jerusalem. Now, as he was going along and approaching Damascus, suddenly a light from heaven flashed around him. He fell to the ground and heard a voice saying to him, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" He asked, "Who are you, Lord?" The reply came, "I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting. Now get up and enter the city, and you will be told what you are to do." The men who were traveling with him stood speechless because they heard the voice, but saw no one. Saul got up from the ground, and though his eyes were open, he saw nothing. So they led him by the hand and brought him into Damascus. For 3 days he was without sight, and he neither ate nor drank. Saul was converted to the way of Jesus after that encounter, and he changed his name to Paul. Paul became an advocate for the weak, and later, in his second letter to the Corinthians, he wrote this: "On behalf of such a one," meaning God, his higher power, "on behalf of such a one I will boast, but on my own behalf I will not boast, except of my weaknesses. But if I wish to boast, I will not be a fool, for I will be speaking the truth. But I refrain from it so that no one may think better of me than what is seen in me or heard from me, even considering the exceptional character of my revelations, of the revelations. Therefore, to keep me from being too elated, a thorn was given me in the flesh, a messenger of the enemy to torment me, to keep me from being too elated. 3 times I appealed to God about this, that it would leave me. But he said to me, 'My grace is sufficient for you, for power is made perfect in weakness. So I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may dwell in me. Therefore I am content with weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities for the sake of Christ. For whenever I am weak, then I am strong."
So today we're going to learn about our next Enneagram type. And as we've mentioned the past several weeks, the Enneagram is this personality typing system that consists of 9 unique personalities. To help us see how we belong here at Journey, but also in the world, we are figuring out individually which of the 9 Enneagram types that we personally relate to. So each week we're going to take on a new number, and this week we're going to take some time to discuss type 1. The cool thing about this series is that if this number does not fit your understanding of your personality, that's okay. It probably will help you learn more about someone you love, probably someone sitting right next to you even today. I, for one, have a soft spot in my heart for Enneagram 1s because my loving wife, Skylar, is one herself, and I also have a 1 wing. And so, and I know several other journeyers, like Natalie mentioned, she's a 1. We have several people who have said that I think this might be my type as well. So I'm interested, what would it be for us to be a 1? What does that look like?
Painful.
Painful? Yeah, right? For some, it's normal. So for starters, the name given to the type 1 personality is the Perfectionist, or I think more kindly, the Reformer, which I think is a little softer to take. And as a community founded by recovering perfectionists, we will probably relate a lot to this, even if we don't find ourselves as type 1s ourselves. The drive for perfection can be tempting for many people, and a lot of us probably fall into that category. But for 1s, this drive is deep to the core. I asked Skylar what she hoped I would mention about her type, and she said that it's easy to personify 1s as hardcore perfectionists and just in there. But really, it isn't about doing what is perfect. She said it's about doing what is right. And I thought that was a good distinction. Because doing what is right is a big thing for 1s. 1s are ethical and reliable, self-disciplined, productive a lot of the times, and they're wise. 1s can be trusted to do the job they signed up for, and they probably are going to be 15 minutes early to whatever job it is. They want to be good, they want to have integrity, and they want to live a balanced life. 1s are motivated by the need to live their lives the right way. Type 1s are justice-centered people who want to leave the world a better place than they found it. And as Skylar let me know, the ideal world 1s dream of is all specific to that individual. Therefore, these desires for a just and moral world stem from personal convictions, making them very, very important to the type 1 individual. As we can see, if we go to this next slide here, perfect, thank you. Like type 8 from last week, we are looking again at the gut triad. So 1s are in this gut triad, meaning they are led by their deep convictions and their intuition, their feelings on the inside, their guts, as we call it. So when the world or a person does not live up to the ideals that 1s have set in their minds, this can be deep to the core, disappointing or unsettling for a 1. And sometimes the 1 is the person that is not living up to this ideal standard in their head. For 1s, the inner critic or the inner saboteur, as some call it, can be very harsh, very intense. 1s are harder on themselves than anyone else could be on them. And often type 1s believe that the inner critic in their heads is 100% correct. They can give their inner doubts more credit than they deserve because 1s desire to be the best version of themselves. This is because the key motivation of a 1 is to be right, to strive for higher and to improve everything, to be consistent with their ideals, to justify themselves, to be beyond criticism so as not to be condemned by anyone else. If they can be their hardest critic, they can handle whatever is thrown their way, right? The basic fear of a 1 is being corrupted or being evil or defected. Often 1s grew up being told to be good, to be a good boy, to be a good girl, to behave, to listen. And they have internalized that voice, thinking that they need to try harder or do or be better than they were. To fight this voice, 1s as children often were the model children, following all the rules and making sure that they were doing what was right and good. 1s learned from an early age that if you are good, you will not be punished. This belief is something 1s must wrestle with throughout their lives. It's a beneficial thing for a 1 to figure out where this idealized version of themselves has come from, because it often can be the voice of not them, but someone else still ringing in their heads from years and years ago. Like I said, the inner critic of a 1 is very intense, so all of us non-1s need to be careful when critiquing a 1, because they can be sensitive. 1s are looking for outside information, the confirmation bias, confirming the negative stuff going on in their minds already. They're already thinking what you are thinking about them. They already are probably thinking worse criticisms about themselves even. This eye they have for what is right and what is wrong can lead a type 1 to be hyper aware of what others are doing around them. If we go to the next slide, Margaret, we can see where 1s go in times of strength and growth, where they're located on the Enneagram here. In unhealthy spaces, 1s can become critical and judgmental of those around them. They can become inflexible and insistent on their own ways, thinking that it is the only right way possible. 1s are in this never-ending search for a perfect world that unfortunately can never exist. This desire can lead to a lot of repressed anger, which is a temptation of the type 1 personality. And stress, 1s react like an unhealthy 4, as we see with that red line there, also called the individualist. When they come here, they start thinking that everything is wrong, that the world is falling apart around them. They become moody and often irrational in these really unhealthy spaces. This can lead to a 1 isolating, being alone, turning inward, resulting in even more self-criticism. However, in healthy spaces, as we can see with that growth there, 1s are such a gift to the world. Because of their dedication to morals and justice, 1s are the people you want on your team. That's who you want your doctors to be, your financial people. This is who you want on your team. They will do everything in their power to make things better. In growth, 1s go to this healthy aspect of the 7, or what is also called the enthusiast. 1s become spontaneous and joyful here. They can get out of their inner critic mindset and start living fully in the moment. They become centered in this moment right now and can have a lot of fun. In growth, 1s are not focused on criticizing self or others, but instead they can relax. They can become adventurous and thrill-seeking in this state. They become curious and not rigid. This is why the fruit of the Spirit for 1s is often called cheerful tranquility. I love that, cheerful tranquility. And as we can see on the black arrows up here to either side of it, a 1 can have a wing in either 9 or in 2. A 1 with a 9 wing is called the idealist. These are typically the more introverted types of the 1s. These 1s want to improve the world, but they do it from a much gentler place, taking on the peacemaker aspects of the type 9 next to it. A 1 with a 2 wing is called the advocate because these 1s seek to serve others with compassion and empathy, going into the helper 2 role, using their extroverted nature to help those around them. These 1s are more likely than the 9 wings to get their work done and to finish the tasks that they want to accomplish, because 9s aren't always the best at that. They want to get in the trenches. They want to help those in need. These 1s with a 2 wing, they are fiery and action-oriented. Broadly speaking, 1s crave a just and moral world, a perfect place that unfortunately is not attainable. They want to be perfect and they want others around them to be perfect as well, but that is also not attainable, as we all know. This can lead to a lot of work that will never arrive at their desired destination, this ongoing thing. It's like a wheel, like a hamster wheel, ongoing. Therefore, a 1 could benefit from learning that it's not always important to be perfect, but instead, it's better to learn to grow, that you can celebrate growth and not need to get to the final destination. 1s are hard workers, really hard workers in fact, and find it very hard to rest. They will only allow themselves to relax once they believe they have thoroughly and completely finished their task for the day, only when they believe they have earned the ability to relax. This can look like denying their own needs to make sure that the job is done. The defense mechanism of a 1 is to control their reaction by repressing their emotions, often repressing their own anger. They can look emotionless on the outside, but really, internally, they feel so deeply. 1s must therefore learn to take time to focus on their needs and emotions and find ways to communicate those needs with those around them. The gift of the type 1 is that they are very self-motivated and want to improve, so if they find that they are repressing their emotions, they are the type best suited to make changes happen in their own lives. Some things for 1s to look out for if you are a 1 yourself. Know that your inner judge is too hard on yourself. Do not always take your internal dialogue as truth. I think all of us could hear that. That's good advice for all of us. I'm hearing that right now. Also, we can easily push ourselves beyond our limits, so we need to be careful. Remember that not everything has to fall on our shoulders and our shoulders alone. We must let others help us, even if they're not going to do it at that perfection level. Another important thing for ones to note is that it takes a while for you personally as a one to get to know your emotional needs and to be honest about your own limitations. So take time to do that work individually, sometimes through body work, through yoga, those kind of things, energy work. It'll benefit you and those around you in the long run to do this. And finally, we cannot get rid of the parts of ourselves that we do not like, so you can't keep trying to do that. Even if you do not meet your own idealized and perfect standards in your head, you cannot get rid of the parts you don't like about yourself. We must all learn this. We must all learn to be ourselves as we are, which I hope is something that we can do better after we finish this series. Skylar shared with me, in response to us talking about the Enneagram Type, this cool TED Talk called "This Talk Isn't Very Good, Dancing with My Inner Critic." And in this, a writer and artist named Steve Chapman shares his experience with overcoming his inner critic, and he comes on the stage with a mask on and he speaks as if he is his inner critic at the first part of the speech. I'm not sure if Chapman is a one himself, but he has some great wisdom for ones and honestly for all of us in this TED Talk. Chapman explains that the only way he could overcome his inner critic was by getting to know him more deeply, even drawing him and making a puppet version of him to talk to. This gave Chapman the chance to understand the origins of these criticisms he had internalized in himself for so long. Chapman got to know himself better through these creative and artistic endeavors. Chapman then cited the Gestalt therapist Arnold, I think it's Baser, I'm probably saying that wrong, in his paradoxical theory of change, which states, and I had to Google this, so this is from online, that change occurs when one becomes what one is, not when one tries to become what they are not. Change does not take place through a coercive attempt by the individual or by another person to change them, but it does take place if one takes the time and effort to be what they are, to be fully invested in their current positions. By rejecting the role of change agent, we make meaningful and orderly change possible. Thich Nhat Hanh also says that if we have energy in us that we want to transform, the only way to do so is to take care of it, not battle it. This is the call for the ones in all of us today, to not battle the self in this perfected view of the world, but to engage fully with the present moment and the present circumstances we are in, seeing beauty in these imperfections all around us, learning the origin of our criticisms and learning to love the self as we are. Some historical examples of ones are Gandhi and Nelson Mandela, and some fictional ones are Mary Poppins or SNL's The Church Lady, if you remember that. In our biblical character today, we got to hear the story about a man who's named both Saul and Paul, which can be kind of confusing, but I think he embodies some of that one energy. Again, it's a sin of the Enneagram to type other people, but he's dead, so he doesn't know we're doing it. So this is just for information purposes to try to figure it out.
Thanks for letting us know that.
Yeah.
But he's dead.
Yeah. Paul's dead. He's in the Bible. He's dead. I don't want to spoil the ending if you haven't read to the end. But Saul was a Pharisee that was alive during the time of Jesus' lifetime, but he never encountered Jesus as Jesus was living on earth. And being a Pharisee, he was studied in the laws of the Jewish faith and took part in enforcing these laws on others. Enforcing them so strongly, in fact, that he was condemning and oppressing the followers of Jesus, even threatening them with death. Jesus had already died by this point, and Saul was trying to wipe out any remnant of this Jesus guy in this countercultural way of being that was spreading all around him. Saul, like an unhealthy one, thought that he knew what was right and what was wrong, and he felt the need to stand in as judge over that which he saw to be immoral and unjust, like these Jesus followers. But one day on the road to Damascus, Saul is blinded by this angelic light, and a voice calls out to him saying, "Saul, why do you persecute me?" And it was Jesus who was calling from beyond the grave, I guess, to persuade Saul to change his ways and to stop threatening the lives of the early Jesus followers. Saul was converted in that moment and in that encounter, and he changed his ways. Saul went from being the perfect Pharisee to being the perfect Jesus follower. His name was changed to Paul, and he became the most influential voice of early Christianity. In fact, a good chunk of the Bible was written by Paul himself, or at least attributed to him in some way or another. In the second half of our reading today in the letter that Paul wrote to the churches in Corinth, he sends this letter in support, which is really a cool thing. From him going in this time of persecuting them to sending them this supportive letter. And he talks about boasting of his weaknesses, something that I don't think he would have done before, going as far as to say that God's power is made perfect in our weaknesses. Talk about an incredibly healthy one response. Paul has not only changed his ways, but now he has become the loudest voice in support of those he once condemned. Paul learned of his injustices and wanted to right what he had done wrong. In this way, Paul seems to show the full range of what a type 1 can look like, both judgmental and perfectionistic, and also, on the other end, caring and supportive and hardworking. We also see here that the benefit of a 1 turning inward and becoming okay with their limitations is a gift. It's something that can free other people as well as the individual himself. Paul is just another example of what it may look like to be a type 1. So after hearing all this information today on the type 1, do you think that you know any type 1s in your life? Could you even be that type 1 that you know? And if so, how do you connect with what was said today? In a moment, we'll split into groups of maybe 2 or 3, maybe 4. I don't know. I don't care. We can do a big group. I think that'd be great too. And I want you to discuss how you relate to this oneness that we've talked about. But we also have some questions on perfectionism that I want us to kind of wrestle with. So I invite us all to step into the shoes of the type 1 or the parts of us that are type 1-esque as we explore these questions together. May we be reminded of the gifts that one offers us, and may we continue to grow as we learn more about one another. May it be so. Amen.
Hi, I'm Mary.
Hi.
And I'm a joyful journeyer. And I'd like to just offer that my personal theology is that God's in it all, whatever that is, joy and sorrow. And this week has been a hard week for our family for a number of reasons. And about midweek, I was in my serenity room. I created a serenity room where I go hide and be still. And I was wondering where God was in all this. And I went to the computer and opened up my Facebook page. And there was this offering on Facebook. And I thought, damn, you know? My God is in it all. And I immediately thought of Journey. And I told Jacob this morning when I showed up, there is nothing that would have kept me from being with you all today. So I offer this blessing and this sending forth from my heart. And know that I recognize the Christ in each of you. And I know we are called to be lovers and healers. That's the Christ in me. You could spend more time trying to teach them your song. Or you can go where your music is already being played. Find your people. Loving you is easy for those in harmony. Go in peace.